Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Joe Karp. I don't know if it's as cold there as it is here. You're up in the north part of Palm Beach County, but what do you think is what's going on here?
Well, the answer is it's not too bad as compared to the north part of this country, so... Did I lose you, Anita?
No, I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay. Yeah, it's not as bad. It was cool out. I wore a sweatshirt when I walked the dog this morning. But, and it's very windy, but yeah, I haven't seen a snowplow come down the block yet, so I'm not sure.
That's okay.
You know.
Well, Joe, I have to say that, every time I read another one of your articles, by the way, Boomer Times is so privileged to have Joe Karp write a monthly column in our magazine. And as much as I've known a lot about what Joe's talked about over the years, every time he writes another column, I say, I didn't know that. So this is the last one, of course, that we've read now in January is what are your desires for end of life care? That's a touchy subject, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And people should, A, deal with it, and B, let their family know where they're coming from, and C, also try to figure out what it means. And you've got to be somewhat general, and until you're right there and you know where your situation is, you got to be general about it. This is, and a good way, by the way, to discuss it with your family and to analyze it, in my experience, is not to be as totally theoretical, because people say things, just like people say things when I want to be rich. Well, how do they define rich? Trump is still working at getting there because his definition of rich is more than he has. And so I want to be rich. The same thing is I don't want to suffer. I don't want to be living on tubes. Well, you sort of got, or I don't want any tubes. Well, the question is, what don't you want them for? How do you define quality of life? And the best way I think people can discuss it is picking out real life examples in their lives. Besides just talking theoretically, if your Aunt Mary is sick, and you see what's going on, talk to your family and say, if I were in Aunt Mary's shape, I would not have wanted that procedure. I would have been X number of years old at that point. The quality of life afterwards would stink. I wouldn't want to go through the pain and suffering. Or I have clients who just say, I don't want it because I've had a good run. And I don't want to go through any of that stuff. I just assume not go through 3 years of treatment merely to prolong my life, where the entire focus of my life will be to prolong the inevitable, if you will, and that my life will center around my doctor's appointments and my treatments. And I don't want to put my family through that, and I don't want to go through that. And I reject that kind of treatment. Or, you know what? I believe that where there's hope, there's hope. Do whatever you can. Maybe the miracle cure will come, and I want to do the battle till I lose the battle. And people have that right as well, but whatever it is, start talking. And then you talk about people you know and your friends and your family, what they're going through and how you would want to be in that state, or public figures. I mean, most of my clients would not have wanted to be Ariel Sharon in a coma for 8 years. Some may have, and maybe Mr. Sharon wanted that as well, that he believed if he was alive, maybe the miracle could happen. So people should have that discussion. Now, when people find that they are dealing with end-of-life issues, as the article indicates, there's now the right through Medicare effective January 1 for people that discuss these options with their physician. The doctor will take place in his office, and they can set up a 30-minute consultation either in the doctor's office or in the hospital, where the doctor will be paid by Medicare. And they also cover a second meeting on that subject matter. And I've run into family members who, in fact, did not know they were terminally ill. That those words were never expressed.
Really?
Whenever they went to the when they went to the doctor, the question that the doctor always discussed was, well, what's the next thing we can try? And never said, you know, this is the ordeal you will go through if you try, and understand that, and these are what the odds are for recovery, and this is what you will go through in the process, and if you don't do it, this is your dying alternative. You will die of this disease, and this will be your other option. And if that's the road you elect, let's talk about how we can make that most comfortable.
Well,
so it's
Joe, I just want to tell everybody again, Joe Karp, I haven't really done this, and we have so much to talk about here, but you're listening to Joseph S. Karp. He's an sports certified elder law attorney. And I have to just say that he has been doing wonderful, wonderful seminars for so many years. And I certainly hope that you will go to one of his seminars. He has 3 coming up here in January. One is on Tuesday, January the 26th, from 1:30 to 4 at Palm Beach Gardens Marriott Hotel. The other is Wednesday, January 27th, from 1:30 to 4, the Port St. Lucie Holiday Inn. And then Thursday, January 28th, from 1:30 to 4, Courtyard by Marriott, Boynton Beach. There are no reservations are required. You just go. But if you want information, you can call their office at 1-800-893-9911 or go to his website, which is karplaw.com, KARPLAW.com. So they're called Free Senior Survival Workshops. And you'll learn about everything you wanted to know and something like this. I was just going to mention, do you ever talk about this particular end-of-life care at your seminars?
I talk about the fact that we prepare what we think is a terrific healthcare surrogate, that people have to understand that when they designate somebody as a healthcare surrogate, they're designating somebody to make medical decisions for them when they can't. That it's more than just a living will, which indicates under the circumstances under which you want life supports terminated, but that this healthcare surrogate gives people the ability to make medical decisions for you if you can't. So they have to know where you're coming from and that they can get your medical information. And I tell people frequently, name somebody who would do what you would do for yourself, who has an understanding and read against you, that doesn't have the moral dilemma. You know, you don't name somebody whose religious beliefs are against blood transfusions to make your medical decisions if you would want a blood transfusion. You also don't want somebody who won't let go of you. And when we're meeting with clients, we really do have that serious conversation far more, because we say, who will do what you want? And frequently they talk about how one child is far too emotional and couldn't do what they would want or would be tortured for eternity if they helped terminate life supports, or if they didn't take every possible measure to keep somebody alive. And also I tell them to discuss it with their other relatives so that the person who makes the decision that you would make doesn't get cast upon. Say you pick your son to make your medical decisions because he can be very objective, even though he nobody wants to let the parent go, or he's the one who would insist upon what you want, even though your other relatives might think it's inflicting torture upon you and that you want to do the battle. And say to your relatives, look, I've spoken to my son. He knows what I want. You may disagree with it, but trust me, he knows what I want. I want to do anything I can to stay alive, or I want to take the A train out if I'm at all feeling any sort of difficulty, and I just don't want to go through the whole dying process. I mean, I just met with a lady yesterday who I'm her backup. I am the person who will make her medical decisions because her husband is no longer mentally capable, and I'm going to be handling her other affairs. And I said, well, let's discuss your decisions as to what you want in terms of treatment, longevity. And she said, well, here's my do not resuscitate order. Joe, I'm not going to go through any of that bull. I don't want any of that stuff. I have COPD. I suffer from pain from my arthritis. She said, if I have some sort of health episode, they're not going to fix my COPD. They're not going to fix my arthritis. I'm still going to be in discomfort and pain 24/7. I don't want anybody to give me CPR so that my heart attack so I have one more organ that is not working properly for me so that I can live longer. So you have to have those conversations. And by the way, this is a lady who did not name her son. They're not estranged, they're just not close. And I said, you have to talk to your son, and let him know that you're giving me this responsibility, because I don't want to get in a battle with your son if he says, no, I want to do something, and two, that's what you want, because I don't want to be in that kind of position, not only for myself, but you don't want your son in that kind of position. Had I only been closer to my mother, she'd be alive today because I wouldn't have let her go like that cold-hearted SOB lawyer.
Right.
No, I'm serious. That would be the mindset. So I want to make sure. And she said, we've already had that. She's a very together lady. She said, I've already told him he understands.
Do you get a lot of people, Joe, who have asked you to be a part of that?
Yeah, and I am reluctant to do it. They have to have really, because when I'm doing that, I'm on 24-hour call. And I get paid when I'm doing it, not to be listed, but when I'm actually doing it. But it's an awesome responsibility.
Yeah.
And I'm on 24-hour call. I have an emergency number that can be reached by very few people, because it's not there for my regular clientele, where I've assumed that responsibility, where I've assumed responsibility in a fiduciary capacity to handle financial affairs for people as a successor trustee or power of attorney or a personal representative. That can wait till Monday morning. That can wait till the morning. It's money. Money can always wait. But when it comes to healthcare decisions, you're on 24-hour call. I mean, that's the way the real world works. So that's how it happens. So I'm very reluctant to do it, and I structured a system whereby, and I discussed with the people that the managing attorney of my law firm would be the backup to me, and I put in copious notes, because 2 years ago this time I was in Uganda. Now, I actually had to be away to be reached by satellite phone when I was doing my guerrilla trekking. But in case I was in an incommunicado location, because that can happen anywhere, both here and abroad, I needed to know that the people could be called, so that 24-hour number didn't ring directly to me. It rang to a phone that somebody could answer on my behalf and get me, or get somebody else from my office. who would be authorized to make those decisions. But we do it very, very, very rarely. It has to be a case where there's absolutely nobody who's appropriate to do it. Sometimes it's a married couple who have no kids. Sometimes it's a single individual. Sometimes it's a married couple where one of the people already has got dementia. Sometimes where they don't get along with the kids. I have one case where the person said, my kids would never terminate my life supports, and I've asked them, and they said, Daddy, we cannot do it. And she said, well, I'm going to put the lawyer in charge, and he asked me, and I begged him to find somebody else because I'm not named in charge of anything else. And he said, no, I really need you to do it. And it's a client that I've had a 20-year relationship with. It wasn't just a stranger who came in off the street.
Well, let me tell people,
that is the opposite of a solicitation to your listeners. I don't want that job. It sucks.
Right, I understand. And I just mentioned it, though, because, Joe, think about this. Maybe 50 years ago, what did lawyers, elder law attorneys, and they probably weren't even called that then, they just were attorneys who were dealing with trusts, estates. How different is it for you as an attorney today than if you could remember 50 years ago? I mean, not remember, but...
First of all, the concept of elder law didn't exist. Living wills and medical decisions didn't exist. The freedom to turn off life supports didn't exist. The freedom to refuse medical treatment didn't exist. The methodologies to keep people alive didn't exist. The bigger problem back then was, there were, people died. When I was a kid, and I'm sure you remember this when you were a kid, you used to hear an expression that you never hear anymore. So-and-so died last night. He or she was never sick a day in his or her life. People today are doing the battle. And I attribute it to a president that I had a lot of difficulty with, which is Lyndon Johnson, because I was against the Vietnam War. But he put through Medicare. Medicare has opened the door to longevity because it pays for medical care that people couldn't otherwise afford. As much as people are complaining about the cost of medical care today, look at all the stuff that's available to keep us alive, the preventative treatments, the preventative examinations. People didn't have colonoscopies. They had colon cancer.
Right.
Okay.
And they didn't even know what it was. They didn't even call it that. It was just cancer. He died, right?
Yeah. So there's so many more decisions because people are living longer, and therefore there's so many more things going on. When you were a teenager, and any of your listeners were teenagers, who heard of macular degeneration?
Right.
People didn't live long enough for that to happen. They were dead by the time that happened. Okay, they didn't live that long. When my grandfather died, he was 74, and everybody said he led a full life. I just was at a funeral of an attorney Thursday, who died at 73. He was still working actively until a month and a half ago, and everybody says, can't believe such a young man.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it has changed a lot. But other question I wanted to ask you is, we also didn't have the Alzheimer's problem and cognitive decline. So people now, you have to be so careful as an attorney to know that the person asking you to do things really knows what he or she is doing.
Well, when you're talking to them, pretty much as a lawyer, if you spend enough time, you get whether they're getting it. And there's two issues on that. One is, many people, particularly in the early stages of Alzheimer's, can still make intelligent decisions and can deal with it. And even with mild stages of it, they know what they're doing. They might forget it, and some of the bigger picture decisions they can make that are much easier. So somebody who comes in who's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's can still say, I trust my spouse and my children to handle all of my financial affairs. I want them to be in charge. And if I ever get sick, I don't want them to go broke. I want them to be able to manipulate my assets for Medicaid planning purposes. And that person knows what they're doing. Now, if they come in with their friend, whom we, by the way, we keep the kids out of the office or the friend when we're meeting with anybody initially, and they say, the friend comes in and says, my neighbor has Alzheimer's and he wants me to be his power of attorney.
Yeah, right.
And then, there's, I've actually had with one case where I knew the person had some dementia and there were bucks involved and she was clearly altering her estate plan because the light went off that she was being manipulated by one of her relatives in the past, and she was changing her documents. I said, and she could afford it, I said, I want you to see a psychiatrist before we even agree what to do, to make sure the psychiatrist feels you're competent. And then I want, and pay the psychiatrist. And what we're going to do is we're going to see if the psychiatrist can come to my office to be present so that right after you sign the documents, if I'm comfortable with what you're doing, you can meet with the psychiatrist again so that psychiatrist can say on January 22nd at 10 a.m., I met with this person right after they had signed their trust and their will and their other documents. I was totally comfortable. They were competent, cognitive, knew what they were doing, understood everything, etc. And I've also said, if a psychiatrist will... Now, you're talking about enough money to justify it, and there were significant changes. If it was just everything to my wife and 2 kids, no problem. But if it's everything to my wife and 1 kid and I'm cutting the other one out because he's a bad boy, even though he's always been in my estate plan, I want to get people to make sure they're good at doing it, even though I would be, and I always say I want the beneficiary, if you will, out of the room, out of the way. And I always say, they say, well, my mother wants me to be in there. And I say, okay. And when there's the trial, when your sister sues, they're going to call me as a witness. And they're going to say, Mr. Karp, did the lady have privacy when she met with you? No, I asked her to keep her son out, and she refused, and her son insisted on being in there. So, Mr. Karp, you don't even know whether she was of free will or he was exercising undue influence. Say, no, I don't. I asked her to keep him out, and he insisted. I said, I'll be your sister's witness against you. I say, stay the hell out of the room so I can be your mother's witness for her plan. And I can say, nobody was in the room. We spoke freely. I interrogated her. I made sure she knew what she was doing and that her son was not going to be an influence on that. So you're always dealing with these issues, even when people have no sign of incompetency when they're doing changes. You're always on your toes with this, but fortunately, with all of these years of experience, and we sort of know what we're doing.
You are, and I have to say that Joseph Karp has such a sterling reputation, not only here in South Florida, but really quite a lot of other places, because people keep recommending him. And although he's board certified here in the state of Florida, he certainly can help you when you come down here or refer someone up north if that's where it comes to. But he is just an amazing guy, nice as can be. He's very smart. He's been our elder law attorney for my family, for us, for a long time. And I just want to remind you, you can go to these free senior survival workshops. It's the best deal in town. I just cannot tell you. You can try the one Tuesday, January 26th from 1:30 to 4 at Palm Beach Gardens Marriott, or Wednesday, January 27th, 1:30 to 4 up at Port St. Lucie Holiday Inn. Thursday, January the 28th from 1:30 to 4. Courtyard by Marriott in Boynton Beach. No reservations are required. And if you want more information, call 1-800-893-9911 or go to his website, karplaw.com, K-A-R-P law.com. Joe, thank you. It was wonderful talking with you today.
Seminar attendees, if we can help them, will be given a free consultation so that it's worth it. Otherwise, if you don't want to come to the seminar, call up and say I'd like a $400 1-hour appointment, and we'll give you that. But I think if you show up at the workshop, if we think we can help you, we'll give you a free consultation.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe.
And everybody stay bundled up and appreciate the joys of South Florida as you watch the CNN on the national news.
Yeah, that's right.
Happy New Year to all.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Bye-bye.